Hi, this is Lisa with Coping with Yarn, and today I will be reading Chapter 15 of E.T. the Extra-terrestrial in his adventure on Earth. Wake up now, okay? Michael sat on the bed beside Elliot. He lifted Elliot's eyelid, and the eye that stared back at him held no gaze he'd ever seen in his brother's eyes before, a gaze of stone. Michael groaned and shook Elliot. Please, Elliot, wake up! Elliot came around slowly, and Michael helped him down the hall toward his room. The two brothers staggering against each other, Michael feeling like he was dragging an iron ball with him. What was this strange downward tugging force? What had happened to his brother? What had happened to the house? Was it caving in or something? Michael touched the wall to reassure himself, but the wall made other dimension movements, its fibers charged with the subtle dance of dark light. Come on, Elliot, pull out of it. He dragged his brother into the bedroom. Elliot felt stiff, like chain, like iron. And E.T. was stretched out under a blanket, turning as white as ash. Michael dumped Elliot, fear rushing through him, 1,000 dark dreams converging at a far-off center. E.T. breathed in some deep ratio, off into his great atomic power. The god had to go. He was out of control. Save me, he cried to his captain, far in the night from here, sailing a ship of farthest light. Come, my captain, come, for the failing botanist first class. My plants are dying, and I too, I fear that I am dying. We've got to tell now, Elliot, said Michael. We need help. Elliot turned toward Michael, his eyes like moon jellyfish, swimming with danger, tentacles shining. No, you can't, Mike, don't! Elliot knew the rest of the world must not come in on them. The army couldn't understand this. The government couldn't either. They would seize the miraculous creature and do things to him. I'll split him half with you, gasped Elliot. That's as far as I'll go. Michael wiped his face, trying to think about half power meant in the moral boundaries of the game. The power coming from the bed was rocking him back and forth on his heels, pushing him around the room like a puppet, and he knew it was more than they could handle. However, the power was cut, and it was beyond them by too much. The walls were radiating dark pulses, and Michael saw 1,000 little shapes of E.T. with a cosmic fire burning behind him. Was a space creature going to burn the world? Elliot! Michael staggered away, trying to shield him from the wild dance of overcharged atoms. We'll lose him if we don't get help. And Elliot, we'll lose you! Elliot's eyes were the red man-o'-war fish, reddish tentacles waving in his gaze. Power was there, beyond the Earth's perceiving. Elliot was glowing like iron in a furnace. He could always fake fever, but this... Michael grabbed Elliot under one arm and lifted E.T. with the other. Michael's big, but the weight of these two creatures in his arms. He strained with them, with Elliot's iron ball and E.T.'s cosmic sun. Michael's fingers twitched, E.T.'s forces moving them. E.T.'s touch was electric magic, and it was converging, 10 million years worth of spatial learning. Flights to forgotten worlds of power, where he had gathering much. Michael dragged them into the bathroom and dumped them in the shower stall. He had to put out this fire. He had to cool Elliot down. The water came on, soaking Elliot and E.T. The aged voyager shook his head as the water hit. Ah, yes, the shower where the willow creature dances. E.T. felt Mary, felt the loveliness of her field, but he was moving into comet showers now. Goodbye, little willow. He staggered forward beneath the waterfall, but it was a waterfall on Venus, in a hidden grotto where secret rivers danced in darkness. E.T. closed his eyes and bathed there. All this, which he had thought to visit everlastingly, would be gone. He had thrown it all away, curiosity killing the space cadet, as that well-known adage had it among flyers to strange worlds. Peek in or out of the dimension, but don't get caught by death. He had thrown immortality away like the idiot he was. Though he had clocked many star miles, he had slipped up. And now a last shower, which some take on Venus, some on Mars, but only a cosmic lunatic would get himself caught on Earth. He splashed his duck feet and sang softly in a deep cosmic underground through ancient reverberation chambers. Accidents will happen. He sank down, knees made of lead, tons of it compressed there. Elliot sank with him, dragged to the floor of the tub. E.T., heal yourself! Elliot felt the power charges going off in him, but couldn't direct the force. It was just maniacal fire twitching in his limbs, and its healing ray was buried beneath waves of flame. The door opened downstairs, and Mary came in, Gertie beside her. Go cheer up your brother, said Mary, sending Gertie along. Mary set the groceries down, and her splitting headache having returned the second she walked in the house. It felt like a knife blade down the center of the forehead. She moved her head back and forth, trying to see around it, then pressed her temples. She had a strong, sudden image of her doctor, prescribing things she didn't want. Michael's thundering step of adolescence came down the stairs, each one of his footfalls like a ball of lead. Take it easy, honey, she said, before you go through the floor. Mom, I have something to tell you. You'd better sit down. Mary sank back toward her chair. Oh, please, God, don't hit me with another childhood disaster. Not today. Not human bite marks on the chest or some other horrible boyhood fistfight story. Her behind hit heavily, and she felt the chair creak, like tendons reaching the snapping point. Is it something serious? More serious than you can imagine. She jumped up, head spinning, something terrible converging on her. Remember the goblin? Don't let it be a sex fiend, she said to herself. What had touched the family? Michael's eyes were like jellyfish. Gertie's footsteps sounded on the stairs, and Mary felt the floor of the house shake from the weight of a 5-year-old child. Mama, cried Gertie, they're gone. They're not in the closet anymore. They? Mary looked at Michael. I better just show you, said Michael. He led her up to the stairs to the bathroom. Make the most excellent promise you can make. Michael! Mary's wits were falling out like hairpins, and Michael was talking like Dungeons and Dragons. What is it? Michael pulled the shower curtain back, and Mary blinked, her eyes remaining closed for one hesitant second, for she thought she'd seen a wreathing coil of reptiles on the shower floor. As her eyes opened, she saw Elliot, and... We're sick. Elliot raised his hand. We're dying. The water was running over them, over Elliot and this monstrous shape. This tower of nightmare, 3 foot tall. From the tower came a signal. The creature's lips were moving, and Mary heard split echoes, shattering cavernous spaces. Willow creature. He's from the moon, said Gertie, and Mary grabbed Elliot and dragged him from the shower. She could think only of escape from whatever it was that held Elliot a moment ago. A wet reptilian thing, too monstrous to contemplate further. Downstairs, all of you, she said, wrapping Elliot in a towel and pushing them all ahead of her. Her mind wasn't working rationally. She was running on some kind of twilight sense, groping blindly. The thing in the bathtub could stay there. She was getting out with the kids. Beyond that, she had no other ideas or interest. We can't leave him alone, protested Elliot. Mary just pushed forward, and she had absolute power now, generated by overwhelming fear and the necessity for flight. She moved all 3 kids like rag dolls toward the door. She opened it, and what last bit of reason she possessed failed her then, because there was an astronaut on the doorstep. His eyes looked out through a domed helmet. His body was enclosed in a spacesuit. She slammed the door in his face and ran through the house to the side door. It was already opening, and another astronaut was entering. Mary bolted for the window. A sheet of plastic came over it, and she watched a man in a spacesuit taping it to the frame. Then moments later, an enormous plastic envelope came down, enclosing the entire house. By nightfall, the house had been converted into a gigantic airtight package draped in transparent vinyl, with huge air hoses climbing up over the roof and circling the structure. Brilliant lights braced on tall scaffolding illuminated it all on all sides. The street was blocked off, and trailers and trucks were parked in the drive. Men came and went in blue jumpsuits. Entry to the house was through a van. Keyes was in the van, just donning his jumpsuit and helmet. He opened the back door of the van and stepped into one of the enormous hoses. He walked along through it in a pneumatic seal. He unzipped it and entered the quarantined house. Astounding, simply astounding. The skeptical microbiologist was talking to himself inside his air helmet, his voice a strange wheezing, his face like a goldfish suffering shock in a dime store bowl as he stood dumbfounded in the area given over to his own team of specialists. Men and women examining tissue slides and other samples from E.T.'s life system. A system that had sent them all into momentary numbness, only some of which were wearing off now as they tried to cope with it. In another area of the house, a team of doctors was working with members of the family. A sample of Mary's blood was being taken into a living room that had become an emergency ward. Having any environmental changes occurred since the it has been sequestered in the house? Temperature, humidity, light intensity? She stared at him, unable or unwilling to speak. Beside her, another doctor was taking Michael's blood pressure. Did you notice any superficial changes in the creature's skin color or in his breathing? Any hair loss? Any evidence of surface sweating? He never had any hair, said Michael. Apparently, one doctor said to another, the children were able to establish a primitive language system with the creature. 7-8 monosyllabic words. I taught him how to talk, said Gertie to the doctor who was snipping a strand of her hair. A psychiatrist knelt before her. You taught him to talk? With my speak and spell. The psychiatrist had apparently never used one. Have you seen your friend exhibit any emotions? Has he laughed or cried? He cried, said Gertie. He wanted to go home. The leader of all this activity passed through to the dining room, which was occupied by an X-ray team, studying bone structures that had been scratching the sides of their helmets. Keyes unzipped a plastic door and entered another room, where the quarantine had been most thoroughly imposed. The entire room was draped in plastic, and within it was still another room, a portable clean room, 10 feet by 10, plastic and transparent. Within it were Elliot and E.T., a team of medical specialists working around them. I'm getting a reading now, not a human EKG pattern. Any QRX waves? No. Any waves at all? I don't know. The reading the specialist was getting had never been covered in any of the manuals, but doctors are funny fellows. Given them a few minutes with any outrage of life, and they'll track it on their machinery. Their calm somehow all pervasive. That's odd, was all one of them said, though it was exceedingly more than odd. Everything about the creature on the table before them was contradictory. Parts of it like the quiet dreams of vegetables, and still other areas possessing the density of stone. Low enough to paralyze the machines. Sonar, have you got a location on the creature's heart? Difficult to see. Well, does it have a heart? The entire screen is lit up. It looks like his whole chest is a heart. They poked him, prodded him, bent his limbs in all directions. Needles pricked his flesh in search of veins. Other needles sought for reflexes. His ear flaps were found. His delicate little ear shoots opened, and his universe-scanning eyes, super-sensitive to light, were exposed to fierce, probing beams. The team worked feverishly, trying to unravel him from every possible angle at once. subjecting his tortured form to every possible scrutiny created by medicine to reveal the innermost workings of life. The doctor who led the team kept trying to wipe his own brow, only to find it encased in glass. He was frustrated, confused, and began to look upon E.T. as a creature dragged from the bottom of the sea, a monster of unconsciousness, an inhuman form whose meaning, purpose, and secret would ultimately evade him. Awesome, yes, it was that, but its unspeakable ugliness robbed the doctor of his usual tenderness. His weary mind was seeing pterodactyls, primordial lizards, grotesqueries, and that should never have been, and fortunately has ceased to be. This thing before him was one of them, cold and unfeeling, a creature out of one's nightmares, the deformed monster that one always feared would emerge from the womb of life. It was natural to hate such an object and wish it dead. "It's alive," said the technician beside him, "but I can't find the breath." Pulse remained steady. The elderly voyager lay still like a dead moon. The bright fluorescent lights beat down upon him in a hideous human glare, shining deep into his nerves. He saw that he had fallen under their spell, these earth doctors who worked equipment of the crudest sort, compared to the delicate scanners on the great ship. "Oh, medicine," he sighed, calling to the outer night where his own physicians were. Body looks like a Marfin's type. Write down comparative ophthalmia. Foot reflex reveals bilateral Babanskis. I'm getting a breath. Just one. He tried to feel his way through the ship toward his higher purpose, for which he was much needed in the universe. Was he to lose all? "Ah, E.T.," he sighed to himself. "They have got you now." The iron chains of earth were on him. He was bound and shackled, and the weight was appalling, and his life force continued its collapse. "Have we got any type of trace elements? We've established a radioactive threshold, but no evidence of superficial burning on the family. No bone damage. Doppler, have you picked up any blood flow? I think we're seeing some blood in the inguinal area. We're picking up extra-terrestrial creatures' readings, and simultaneous boys' reading." Again, the chief doctor nervously wiped his helmet. The boy and the monster were linked somehow, as if the monster were feeding on the child's life. The child came in and out of consciousness, hallucinating and babbling, sinking under again. "I cut the cord that ties them," the doctor, "if I only knew where what it was." He probed deeper, wiped his glass dome again, and he was certain the creature was dying. His concern was not the boy. The heartbeat was irregular, the pulse weak, and all of it somehow synced with the monster, a hidden mesh that connected them in the most hellish way. "God damn it," thought the doctor with a glance toward the outer rooms. Hadn't anyone figured this out yet? He saw the domed, nodding heads nodding over their machinery, and he knew that nobody had any answers for this one. He stared back down at the monstrous face. If ever there was unfeeling, unrelated, cold, and loveless creature in the universe, it was this goddamn thing before him. Somehow it had evolved intelligence for them. There had been a spaceship, but the creatures who ran it were parasites, predators, incapable of sympathy, kindness, all the fine human things. He knew it as surely as he was standing there, and he wanted with all his heart to strangle the freak. It was dangerous. He could not say why, but his whole body knew it was dangerous to all of them. A needle punctured E.T.'s skin, and on the table beside him, Elliot winced as if the puncture had been into his own body. He turned toward the only familiar face, toward Keyes. "You're hurting him! You're killing us!" Keyes stared down at E.T., and the vision he had of a noble space creature had altered radically in the face of E.T.'s ugliness. Yet Keyes' mind still burned with high mental waves. The thing on the table before him, ugly as it was from the ship, and the ship was infinite in its sweep and power. To serve it was Keyes' mission. "We're trying to help him, Elliot. He needs attention." He wants to stay with me. He doesn't know you. Elliot, your friend is a rare and valuable creature. We want to know him. If we can get to know him, we can learn so many things about the universe and about life. You saved him and were good to him. Can't you let us do our part now? He wants to be with me. He will be. Wherever he goes, you'll go. I promise you that. But when the creature was going, none could follow. The whirling powers of the body were shifting at the core. The old being felt the enormity of this power, that of the ancient dragons. His race had harnessed this flame, this life. Was it to end in cataclysm? Cataclysm? Was he to destroy this planet? No, he cried in himself. It must not come to that. What more horrible fate